February 20th, 1943, north of Kasserine Pass, Tunisia. The official battle reports would never capture what German tank commanders saw that morning. Through the dust and smoke of the North African desert, 5 American Sherman tanks moved like parts of a single creature. Silent, coordinated, unstoppable. No flags waved, no flares signaled, no riders carried messages between machines separated by broken terrain. And yet, they converged. Each tank covering the blind spots of the others, each crew somehow knowing exactly where their comrades were. German Panzer IVs, fitted with few G5 radios, crackled with static. Tank commanders strained to hear their company leaders through the distortion of weak amplitude modulation transmitters. Most of their tanks carried only receivers. They could listen, but they could not speak. The Americans, meanwhile, were connected by something the Germans had never imagined: frequency modulation. 25 watts of crystal-controlled precision that cut through engine noise and chaos like a knife through paper. 8,000 miles from Detroit's assembly lines, the most decisive advantage of the war was revealing itself. Not in armor or firepower, but in the invisible waves that carried human voices through steel and fire. It began quietly on July 27, 1941. That day, the U.S. Army standardized 3 radio sets, the SCR 508, 528, and 538, for all medium tanks. While German forces drove deep into the Soviet Union, American engineers at the Galvin Manufacturing Company, later known as Motorola, were building something different, something that would change how armies spoke. Daniel E. Noble, the man who conceived the use of FM in military vehicles, and Henry Magnuski, the principal engineer, built a radio strong enough to survive the noise, heat, and vibration of battle. It weighed 181 pounds and transformed every Sherman into a node in the world's first battlefield network. The BC-604 transmitter delivered 25 watts of power, 2.5 times stronger than Germany's best. It operated with crystal stability over 10 preset channels, while the twin BC-603 receivers let a commander monitor 2 nets at once. But the true revolution lay in the silence between the words, in the absence of static. Edwin Armstrong's FM technology had ended the era of interference. Where German voices dissolved into electric hiss, American tankers spoke clearly, even as artillery thundered overhead. November 8, 1942. Operation Torch. American armor came ashore in North Africa. The 2nd Armored Division rolled onto the beaches near Safi and Fadala, each tank alive with the hum of an SCR 508 set. Across the desert, the Afrika Korps, the pride of the Wehrmacht, fought with one hand tied. In each 5-tank platoon, perhaps 2 had full transceivers. The others could only listen. Orders were given by radio. Acknowledgement came only through movement. When a command tank went up in flames, easily spotted by its multiple antennas, the rest of the platoon was suddenly blind, mute, and alone. That fragility met its match at Kasserine Pass, February 14 to 24, 1943. Though the Germans claimed victory, what they witnessed shook them. American tankers scattered over 50 miles still spoke as one. They coordinated strikes, shared warnings, and called in artillery support through clear FM channels that no German ear could match. Captured intelligence reports told the story. American units maintained clarity at ranges where German radios whispered nothing but static. Even worse, it seemed every American tank could transmit. Not just the commanders. By September 1943, as American armor pushed into Italy, the mountains became a test of radio endurance. For German crews, the hills swallowed signals whole. For the Americans, FM radios thrived where others failed. Tank platoons separated by ridgelines coordinated as if they could see one another. In the official reports, officers described communication, routine at distances where German radios gave only static. And then came Normandy. June 6, 1944, 06:30. The sea was on fire. Sherman tanks rumbled off landing craft and through the surf, their radios already linking them with naval gunners offshore, coordination that the Germans could only dream of. But even miracles have flaws. In the hedgerows, tank crews discovered that their SCR 508s couldn't talk to the infantry's SCR 300s, two worlds divided by frequency. Men died in those gaps. Infantry who saw German soldiers with Panzerfausts could not warn the tanks that stood only yards away. It was fixed the American way: fast, simple, and human. Field telephones, the EE-8, bolted in ammunition boxes outside each tank, wired straight to the intercom. By Operation Cobra, late July, soldiers could talk directly to the men inside the armor that protected them. And from that moment, American tanks and infantry moved as one body. July 25 to 30, 1944, Operation Cobra. 200 Sherman tanks, commanded by Major General Edward H. Brooks, rolled forward like a living network. The Panzer Lehr Division, once the pride of Germany, faced an enemy that seemed to think as one. Every warning, every sighting, every cry for artillery moved through the air in seconds. Shells fell within minutes of target reports. For the Germans, the air was empty. No orders, no coordination, only confusion. It was a cruel irony. Germany had invented the doctrine of radio warfare. Heinz Guderian had written it himself in Achtung Panzer back in 1937. The tank's power is its communication. And yet, by 1943, his army could not even equip its tanks with the radios his doctrine demanded. In that year alone, Germany built nearly 5,700 medium tanks, but fewer than 2,000 Fuji transceivers. Many tanks carried none at all. The Soviet Union fared worse. Their mighty T-34s often went into battle guided only by flags and prearranged plans. By contrast, America equipped every one of its 49,000 Shermans with a radio. Every tank was a voice. Every voice could be heard. Motorola's Chicago factory became the heartbeat of that achievement. Before the war, they made car radios, ordinary civilian things. But when the orders came, the factory retooled overnight. Each SCR 508 required 2,748 parts. The BC-604 transmitter alone held nearly 500 capacitors and 400 resistors, each one tested to endure the heat of battle. By 1942, production reached 3,800 units. By 1943, more than 11,000. By 1944, 24,000 more. When the war ended, over 50,000 tank radios had left those Chicago doors, one for nearly every Sherman ever built. That scale of communication changed everything. Crystal-controlled stability meant every channel stayed true under shock and shell fire. The twin receivers allowed commanders to hear both company and platoon nets at once. A simple thing, but in battle, it was everything. Orders flowed down instantly. Reports rose just as fast. For the first time, every crewman, gunner, driver, loader could warn the commander through the BC-606 intercom. Throat microphones carried their words clearly through the roar of engines and the scream of shells. The Germans had nothing like it. Many of their crews still shouted over the noise or tapped shoulders in the dark. Power, too, mattered. The SCR 508 could draw from 12 or 24 volts, switching automatically. Its dynamotor kept the signal clean, free from the crackle of electric interference that haunted German sets. This technological web gave birth to a new kind of warfare. American combat commands, those flexible task forces combining tanks, artillery, and infantry, depended entirely on it. Because their radios worked, they could form and dissolve units at will, mixing battalions like puzzle pieces. German commanders could hardly believe what they faced. They fought by the book. Rigid formations, strict hierarchies, chains of command that broke the moment a single link was lost. The Americans fought like a living organism. September 1944, the Battle of Arracourt. The 4th Armored Division met Germany's Panther tanks, Heavier, faster, deadlier. On paper, the Americans should have been slaughtered. But every Sherman could see beyond its horizon. Each one called out enemy positions to others it couldn't even see. Artillery observers riding inside command tanks relayed targets through the net, and within minutes, shells fell. For 3 weeks, the 4th Armored destroyed 281 German armored vehicles while losing only 41 Shermans. A kill ratio of 7-to-1, achieved not through armor or firepower, but through voices carried by invisible waves. German intelligence never understood what they were hearing. Captured reports spoke of unusually disciplined radio procedures. They thought it was training, not technology. They assumed only command tanks had transmitters. They were wrong. Their ambushes failed because every Sherman could command. Their tactics, knocking out lead tanks to disrupt the rest, no longer worked. The Americans always responded, always coordinated, even in chaos. March 1945, the Rhine. When the 9th Armored Division reached the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen and found it still standing, the news moved by radio faster than men could run. Within minutes, 1st Army headquarters knew. Within an hour, divisions across the front were shifting toward the bridge. German units, cut off from their telephone lines by Allied bombers, couldn't react. Their counterattacks came piecemeal, each crushed by coordinated American fire. At Remagen, the radio net was as vital as the bridge itself. It held everything together. A month later, in April 1945, the encirclement of the Ruhr pocket marked the end. American armored columns from the 1st and 9th Armies closed the trap entirely by radio. Inside, 325,000 German soldiers found themselves cut off, their communications destroyed, their command collapsing into silence. Field Marshal Walter Model's final message, before his line went dead, was a confession of defeat without words. No contact with adjacent units. No communication with higher headquarters. Coordination impossible. He didn't need to say more. The war was over for them. For the Americans, communication had become more than a tool. It was a lifeline. Every tank crew knew they were never alone. Even when surrounded, their radios carried voices of comrades miles away. The Germans fought as individuals. The Americans fought as one mind. Otto Carius, one of Germany's most skilled tank commanders, would later write of the loneliness inside his Tiger. He spoke of limited communication, of orders delayed, of confusion in the smoke. He didn't speak of the silence, but it's there between his words. The truth was simple and devastating. By 1944, the Americans were winning the war not just with tanks, but with connection. They moved faster, struck harder, and coordinated across miles of chaos. The race across France that summer, Patton's famous advance, owed as much to Motorola as it did to armor. After the war, the truth stood clear in the records and the ruins alike. Germany had built the better tanks, thicker armor, longer guns, sharper optics. But America had built something else, a way for men and machines to think together. When American engineers tested captured German equipment, the findings confirmed what the battlefield had already proven. The Few G5, the standard German tank radio, was 5 years behind the SCR 508 in design and performance. Its variable tuning drifted off frequency. Its power was too weak. Its electrical noise drowned its own messages. The U.S. Army's technical report put it plainly. German tank communications equipment is approximately 5 years behind American systems. Soviet evaluators agreed. When given the choice, they copied American FM technology for their own post-war tanks, leaving German designs behind. The numbers told their own story. American radio production, SCR 508, 528, 538 sets, over 50,000 units. Sherman tanks built, 49,324. Radio deployment rate, 100%. Transmission power, 25 watts. Frequency stability, +0.01%. Range, 7 miles moving. 15-mile stationary German radio production, FUG-5 transceivers, approximately $6,000, medium and heavy tanks, over $12,000, deployment rate, 20%. Transmission power, 10 watts, frequency stability, plus E1%, range, half a mile moving, 2 to 3 miles stationary. For the Germans, even the best transmission was fragile, thin threads in the noise of war. For the Americans, communication was a blanket that covered the battlefield. The difference in response time told everything. An American fire mission could be called and executed in under 5 minutes. A German one might take 30. This invisible network, woven from the voices of tank crews, became the unseen weapon of the war. The SCR-508's success established the principle that still governs modern warfare, that information, not armor, decides the outcome. From that day forward, connection meant survival. Isolation meant death. Modern armies learned the lesson well. When the new German Bundeswehr rose in the 1950s, every Leopard tank carried multiple radio systems. A training manual from that era summed it up in a single line. The defeat of superior German tanks by inferior American vehicles with superior radios teaches that information dominance outweighs platform superiority. The same truth echoed decades later, across the deserts of Kuwait in 1991 and Iraq in 2003, when American and Allied forces, armed with unmatched communications, shattered enemies who still fought in isolation. In the end, the story of the Sherman was never about steel or guns. It was about connection, about the 181 pounds of radio equipment that gave every tank a voice, and every crew the certainty that they were not alone. Germany's tanks fought as individuals. America's fought as a network, and in that difference lay victory. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel would later put it simply, "We knew how to build better tanks. You knew how to make them work together." Whether he said it or not, the words ring true. Because on battlefields from Tunisia to the Rhine, the real power of the Sherman wasn't its gun. It was its signal, the calm, steady voice across the static that turned 1,000 machines into one,